I believe there is no such thing as failure. You either get what you wanted or you get the lesson you needed. In this video, I'm going to share with you what I learned from failing my piano exam and what you too can learn from my experience. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Manu, where I give sight reading tips to piano players. So let me share my story. So a few years ago, I decided to redo my AMUS exam. So AMUS is short for Associate in Music, and it's a few grades above grade 8. And in Australia, to pass the AMUS, you must get an A. And the first time I took this exam, I was about 17 from memory. I obviously didn't get an A because I failed. And since then I stopped piano lessons, and it's only a few years ago that I decided to retake this exam. But I wanted to do things a bit differently. I wanted to actually learn from my mistakes. So one of the questions I asked myself was, okay, what do successful piano players do? How do they pass this exam? And if they can do it, if a 12-year-old can pass the AMUS exam, why can't I? And so I set out to find out this for myself during my year of preparation. The first thing I did was to spend some time choosing the right pieces for my exam, because I knew that I would have to stick with those for a year. So I wanted to make sure that I absolutely loved the pieces, and that even after a year I would still want to play them. So I spent quite a bit of time going through the syllabus, listening to recordings, marking the ones that I liked, and then I brought it down to 4 pieces, which is the requirement. And I must say I was happy with the selection. To this day, I still love these 4 pieces. And of course, I decided to take piano lessons again. I found a local teacher who happened to be trained in the Russian piano method. So I thought it would be interesting to have a different perspective. And it's thanks to this teacher that I learned things like mental practice and how to memorize music through mental practice. And what I decided to do this time round was to memorize my 4 pieces, which is something really outside my comfort zone because I'm used to reading music. I rarely memorize music, but this is something I wanted to do, I guess, to try to prove to myself that I could do it. So that's what I set out to do. But the way I memorized was very thoroughly. For example, so I would sit away from the piano, and in my head I would mentally rehearse. So think of every single note, all the details, all the dynamics, the articulation, all of that had to be crystal clear. So any time I couldn't quite think of the note or the dynamic, whatever, I would go back to the score and check. So that's one way I memorized. I also tried to write out the music by hand. So with on a manuscript, I tried to write out from memory my pieces. And this is a really good test actually to see how well you know your pieces. I also listened to numerous recordings, so not just by one artist, but by many different artists. That way I could, get more ideas on the interpretation, and I would take notes of the things I liked about their interpretation and, maybe try to replicate what I liked as well. And during each practice session, I took notes after practicing. So I wrote down my observations, anything I had to remember for the next session, the things like my tempo, what speed I had reached with the metronome, and I even used an app called Modacity to track my progress. And when I wasn't practicing, I was watching videos on piano technique on YouTube. For example, Josh Wright, his channel on piano technique. I wrote many notes from his videos, which I've still got here. This is full of notes on piano technique. And I also watched master classes, which are also available on YouTube. And after I learned all of my pieces really thoroughly, I spent probably about 2 months prior to the exam just practicing performing. And so I got friends over, I got family over, I performed in front of a former teacher, and I also got my partner to distract me when I was performing, making me run up and down the stairs so I would feel out of breath, distracting me with noises, with laughter, and I had to keep going. I had to keep playing all from memory. It's a really good way to test your concentration. So I did all of those things. So in short, I fully immersed myself into this project. I wasn't doing it half-heartedly like I had done the first time round. And through this whole process, I learnt not to be attached to the outcome. So I decided that no matter what happened, whether I would pass or not, that I would still enjoy the experience, that I would still focus on the music and the joy of learning. And so you might be wondering, well, did I pass this exam? Well, I'm happy to report that I did pass the exam. I was able to perform all 4 pieces from memory. I had one little slip up in the first piece, which was a fast Bach prelude. For some reason, my fingers got tangled up in one little bit, but I recovered and the rest was pretty good. So it must have worked because I passed. But either way, whether I passed or not, I'm so happy that I decided to take this exam again, because what I learned in that year of preparation was probably more than I've learnt in the previous decade. I learnt so much, and it's given me so much confidence now to tackle other difficult pieces. And it's also changed my mindset from thinking, oh, I'm not as good as those piano players, to, well, I can be just as good as them if I put in the hard work, if I work just as much as they do. And the thing is that you don't really realize how much work something requires until you do it. And because the danger is that when you look up at certain people that are successful or further along than you, all you see is the end result. You don't see how much work has been put in. You don't see the sweat and the tears that have gone before it. All you see is them doing something that looks easy. They make it look easy. And actually, I remember looking at my classmates when I was at uni and watching them perform these really difficult pieces on the piano. And I would think, oh, I'm not like them. I'm not as good as them. But actually, it was just a shift in my mindset that I needed. I can do it too. I just had to figure out how. Like, how do they do it? And let me replicate what they do. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, if you want to be good at anything, whether it's sight reading, piano, baseball, what have you, look at people who are successful at this skill and try to see what it is that they do on a daily basis. I think it was Jim Quick who said in his book Limitless that genius leaves clues. And I think this is so true. If you think of any great composer, artist, or athlete, and you look at their life, you'll see how much work they put in and over, how long. So if you want to be as good as those guys, try to figure out what it is that they do behind closed doors. What behaviors do they adopt? What beliefs do they have? What habits do they have? And see if you can replicate that. So in your case, ask yourself, okay, what do good sight readers do every day? Like, how did they get here? How have they become such good sight readers? And to get you started right now, what you can do is watch this video where you can hear the story of Philip Sear. He's a pianist and he has excellent sight reading skills, and he talks about what he's done to get there. So I recommend that you check out this video and see if you can find the clues to his skill. I have put them there deliberately. Alright, well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please like it and share it with your fellow musicians. I will see you in the next video. Happy sight reading!